Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Coronavirus Radio. Wrestlenomics Radio. I'm Brandon Thurston. I'm broadcasting on demand from Buffalo, New York. In the midst of a pandemic, COVID-19 has taken over the world and the wrestling industry. Just a few days ago, we were all careful and skeptical and cynical. The idea that WWE or wrestling events would be affected by this flu seemed unlikely. As someone said, this will pass. This will go away. But now here on Friday evening, SmackDown is about to be taped at the Performance Center in front of no fans. The NBA season has been suspended. The NHL season has been suspended. Major League Baseball spring training has been suspended. Opening day has been postponed. The XFL has even been suspended. There we are. NCAA tournaments canceled. Major League Soccer suspended. PGA Tour suspended. Formula 1 suspended. Soccer in Europe suspended. With this helpful graph from the New York Times, locally, I've got my local Wegmans, just toilet paper flying off the shelves. No one knows why, but it's gone. Not far from Buffalo, we have someone in Monroe County, which is the county where Rochester, New York is. Someone has coronavirus. And All Elite Wrestling was supposed to do an episode of Dynamite next weekend. That is postponed indefinitely. But the question on everyone's mind, what will happen with Wrestlemania? According to the Tampa Bay Times here, they came out with an article yesterday afternoon saying WrestleMania 36 is not a coronavirus casualty. At least not yet. The Hillsborough County, that's the county where Tampa Bay is located. The policy group, including the sheriff, the county administrator, they decided on Thursday not to call off the annual sports entertainment spectacle set for April 5th at Raymond James Stadium. But the group could reconsider based on how the virus progresses or dissipates in a week. That group of officials approved a 7-day local state of emergency in Hillsborough County, but that doesn't affect WrestleMania. Of course, WrestleMania is happening on April 5th. And the decision follows Governor Ron DeSantis' recommendation that cities and counties should postpone or cancel any mass gatherings over the next 30 days. So that does include WrestleMania. If a mass gathering is not canceled, event organizers should have screening measures in place to prevent people who have been exposed to the virus from entering, he said. So the city says they'll reassess it. The governor says you should probably cancel anything that's happening within 30 days. This led to WWE later in the day putting out its own press release about its statement on the potential impact of COVID-19. The press release reads, today, WWE communicated perspective regarding the potential impact of COVID-19 on the company's financial performance. Don't worry, WWE said. WWE has substantial financial resources, both available cash and debt capacity, which currently total more than $0.5 billion to manage the challenges ahead. So $0.5 billion, or as some people call it, $500 million. This reminds me of a time in, as it turns out, July 2015, when WWE surpassed the $500 million mark for social media touch points, social media followers. They put out a press release celebrating the moment in Vince McMahon, I think on the following conference call. Said it was 500 million, but the promoter in me wants to say $500 million. So they have a total of $500 million in cash and debt capacity to manage the challenges ahead. The fundamentals of the company's business remain strong, reflecting the passion of WWE's fans and the quality of its content. Management continues to believe the company is well positioned to take full advantage of the changing media landscape and increase value of live sports rights over the longer term. The health and safety of WWE fans, performers, and employees are the company's top priorities, and management is monitoring the situation closely domestically and internationally. And that's especially important to note that WWE has some European dates coming up in May. The potential impact of COVID-19 and corresponding changes in the way WWE operates may adversely impact the company's business, including but not limited to its live event ticket sales and the sale of merchandise at those events. It should be noted the company may be directly It should be noted that the company may be directed to cancel, postpone, or relocate certain upcoming events, and the number of these changes is unknown at this time. The company is currently unable to quantify the potential financial impact of COVID-19, but the financial impact to the company may be material. Accordingly, the company is withdrawing its previously announced first quarter and full year 2020 guidance due to the increased uncertainty of the financial impact of COVID-19 to the company. So what does all that mean? So WWE is referring to here, the company is withdrawing its previously announced first quarter and full year 2020 guidance due to the increased uncertainty of the financial impact of COVID-19. So what are they referring to there? The first quarter and full year guidance. So they're referring to what they said in the press release, last earnings release, which they put out with their last earnings report. They gave first quarter 2020 business outlook, where it says the company estimates first quarter 2020 adjusted OIBDA of $60 to $65 million. Now, adjusted OIBDA is a profit metric that the WWE prefers. It is its preferred non-GAAP way of measuring profit. Basically, they get to factor out things that they don't want to consider when they tell you what their profit is. And OIBDA stands for operating income before depreciation and amortization. So OIBDA itself is I believe is a GAAP measure, but they prefer adjusted OIBDA, which I think factors out things like stock compensation and other things they don't like to compare quarter over quarter. Which actually, where is it now that I've rambled about it for a moment? The company presents adjusted OIBDA as its primary measure of performance. The company defines adjusted OIBDA as operating income excluding depreciation and amortization, stock compensation expense, certain impairment charges, I don't know what that means, and other non-recurring material items that would otherwise impact the comparability of results between periods. Adjusted OIBDA includes amortization, depreciation expenses directly related to the company's revenue generated, including, okay. The company believes the presentation of adjusted OIBDA is relevant and useful for investors because it allows them to view the company's segment performance in the same manner as the primary method used by management to evaluate segment performance and to make decisions regarding the allocation of resources. Additionally, the company believes adjusted OIBDA is a primary measure used by media investors, analysts, and peers for comparative purposes. I have discussed adjusted OIBDA with some people who professionally try to analyze stocks, and they think this is kind of wacky. But maybe there are others out there who think this is normal. But I do think this is something that does happen with other companies. It's not as if WWE is the only one that does this, and because they're a pro wrestling company, they're special carnies. Now there are others that do this, but I prefer to look at operating income and net income, which WWE also reports, but just doesn't highlight as much. Anyway, that's what they give guidance on. Adjusted OIBDA, $60 to $65 million for Q1. Q1 refers to January 1st to March 31st. All right, and let's see here. So that's what we know about Q1, and then they give some full year 2020 business outlook. In 2020, the company believes the escalation of rights fees will provide contractual revenue growth of approximately $185 million. So what I take that to mean is if we drag over this Excel spreadsheet, oh my goodness, there it is, and WWE's core content rights fees, which have been growing year over year and grew more in 2019, will grow even more in 2020. That, of course, is largely related to new deals going into effect from NBC Universal for Raw and Fox for SmackDown at the rate of 3.6x. That's their U.S. deal. They also got a modest, a 1.8x increase from India. That should, I would imagine, is going into effect immediately because that deal ended at the end of the year, and WWE continued to air on its on 10 Sports, I think it is, on the Sony channel in India. And the UK deal may be coming in at a small downgrade. But anyway, this is the expectation from my reading of that press release, is that they are estimating $534 million in core content rights fees there, which is a substantial increase from the prior year. I don't think that they're saying that this is changing now because of, based on that press release from yesterday. These are, I believe, this is guaranteed money. And W will probably deliver some kind of content, even if they can't run live events, if they have to run empty arena events, or they have to deliver some sort of content that's non-live event content. I think they'll be okay, at least with this section of their business here. I believe this is, as they say, guaranteed escalating TV rights fees, and I think these are guaranteed. So that's $185 million increase in that section of their business. They also say in here, yada yada. The company will achieve 2020 adjusted EBITDA of $250 to $300 million, and I do think that is what they're withdrawing there. Now, they went on to say in this paragraph, management believes it has the potential to exceed this range, but is unable to provide additional guidance at that time. And I believe what's in that black box of a sentence is W believes it could potentially exceed that range if it manages to finalize a very lucrative pay-per-view rights deal, which Vince McMahon sort of gave some hint that maybe they would maybe even complete by the end of Q1 to possibly take pay-per-views off of the network and onto a major streaming service. So again, this 250 to 300 million adjusted EBITDA guidance, I think they're withdrawing that. And I believe they're withdrawing the 60 to 65 million dollars in adjusted EBITDA guidance for Q1. So you can expect lower profits than they predicted there. To put this in some sort of context, here's another graph. Here's a column graph. Let's see. Yeah, ignore this revenue thing. That's wrong. Okay, but this is correct. Total adjusted EBITDA by quarter. This is what they projected. I just took the median of 60 to 65 and made it 62.5. A substantial increase from the prior Q1 of 12.4 and from the Q1 of 2018 of 35.2 and of 2017 of 25.2. So you can bet that that's going to be lower. Why? Well, let's go back to the W press release here, which is over here where they say may adversely impact the company's business, including but not limited to its live event, ticket sales, the sale of merchandise at those events. And W may have to cancel, postpone, relocate upcoming events. They don't mention WrestleMania here. They don't want to get into it. W also put out a statement about WrestleMania itself. This is where, I think among others, ESPN had it. While we remain committed to hosting WrestleMania at Raymond James Stadium on Sunday, April 5th, we are putting contingency plans in place in the event that it is canceled by government officials, civil authorities, and or local venues. The statement read, the health and safety of our fans, performers, and employees are our top priorities, and we are monitoring the situation closely with our partners and government officials in Tampa Bay. So W doesn't want to be the one to cancel here, and they've got a few weeks, a couple weeks maybe, before they really have to make a decision, I suppose. There's some speculation that the officials in Tampa and WWE are trying to pass the buck off to each other. Nobody wants to be the one that makes the decision. Maybe it's even possible that maybe WWE has some sort of insurance that they can't make as much of a claim on if they voluntarily cancel it, and would prefer to be forced to cancel it by a government official, civilian authorities, and or local venues. So, but let's entertain the prospect of if WrestleMania is canceled, what would that cost WWE in their business? I think in the luckiest scenario is that I think WrestleMania will be postponed probably to June or July, and it'll take place probably still in Tampa. Maybe if this relationship is going sour with Tampa officials, maybe it'll take place somewhere else. But I think there will be a WrestleMania that takes place in the summer. And business-wise, it probably won't be as big of a deal. And that of course, is going to hurt a lot of the independent companies and wrestlers who are, relying on WrestleMania weekend to be a big week of business for them. And by the way, I think with the exception of WXW, that as of this moment, I don't know that any independent wrestling shows that are running in Tampa that week have announced that they are canceling. At the very least, I think they're waiting to see whether WWE is really going to cancel or postpone WrestleMania or not before making any moves. Obviously, they're all kind of, going through the path that WrestleMania is blazing here. So let's think about the amount of money that we lost or is at risk here of not running WrestleMania. And WrestleMania is not the only event at risk. Obviously, WWE was supposed to run a SmackDown tonight in Detroit, Michigan. That's been canceled and relocated to the Performance Center in Orlando. I imagine WWE events for a while are going to be canceled. Non-televised house shows don't make that much money for them. TV does. Those tickets, of course, sell better. I'm just going to pull up some information about WWE's live event finances here. As we can see, the operating income on live events for many quarters recently. It has not been a positive number. Negative $1 million for the last quarter of 2019. Lost money the quarter before that. Made money in Q2, which contained Wrestlemania for all four of the last all 4 of the last years, and lost a little bit of money in Q1 of 2019. So I think it's quite likely that WWE is barely making any money on house shows, probably making decent money on Raw and SmackDown tapings, and definitely making money on pay-per-view events, just because those have higher attendances and probably higher ticket prices. Definitely in the case of pay-per-views, higher ticket prices. So there will be events other than WrestleMania that are taken off the board here. But and let's take a look at venue merchandise, which is down here in these tabs here. Let's see. So venue merchandise in 2019 made them just about $19 million. In the most recent quarter, made them $3.2 million. That number has been declining, very much correlated to attendance. So let's just do a rough estimate here. Let's say they lose on Q1. Let's say about a third of the month, even though it's a little less than that at this point. Now let's go with a quarter. Let's take the median of 3.2 and 4.8 here, which is 4 exactly. Let's take a quarter of that. That's 1. So let's say right there, that's $1 million in venue merch gone. And let's go back to, and that's just revenue. We have no idea what the profit margin is on that. And let's take a look at the revenue for Q4 27 for the Q1 of 2019, 26. So let's just say they repeat the business. They would have, without coronavirus, they would repeat the business of 2019, let's say $26 million. And let's take a quarter of that. And that comes out to $6.5 million. So before we even think about Mania, it looks like we're looking at maybe as much as $7.5 million in revenue at risk. And I don't know why I just added that to that number. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so maybe at most $7 or $8 million for Q1. And to put that in some sort of context, what does that really mean for WWE? How big of a piece is that? Let's see here. Yeah. So let's just let's take this Q1 number off because that number is incorrect. Ignore that. So if we look at WWE's total revenue for the entire company across quarters here, did a lot of money last year because of the first quarter with new TV rights fees coming in, $323 million. This quarter, though, also included a Saudi Arabia event, so that was worth probably about $50 million. And no Saudi event here in Q1. So just to do a rough estimate here, if we take, if we imagine 323 minus no Saudi Arabia event, you've got about that much money. Otherwise, with that being $273 million. So 7 divided by 273 is something like 3% of the revenue for the quarter. Not a massive hit, at least when it comes to Q1. We haven't talked about WrestleMania yet, though, so let's try to figure that out. And this could very well. We're only in the middle of March here, and it may take a couple of months maybe for coronavirus to be contained. Yeah, so this is probably an issue that's going to spill over into Q2, maybe through half of Q2, maybe through all of Q2. Who knows? So I won't try to figure all that out, but we can figure out how much money WrestleMania brings in for them. So the biggest piece by far will be the ticket sales. So as it relates to WWE in Tampa in early April, there are 5 events. Just pull this over here. You can look at the Ticketmaster website. And you've got Hall of Fame on Thursday, SmackDown on Friday, TakeOver on Saturday, WrestleMania itself on Sunday. I don't know why it's not here. It's not because it's been canceled. It's probably right here. For whatever reason, it didn't come up when I did that search. Yeah, so it's still here on the Ticketmaster website. So yes, again, Hall of Fame, SmackDown, NXT TakeOver, WrestleMania itself, and Raw. And again, for a quick and easy estimate, I'm just going to guess that all of these would produce something around $1 million gate. So that's $4 million right there in ticket revenue. And don't worry, we're not forgetting venue merch. And we got to figure out an estimate for what WWE would draw as a live event gate. So to get some idea of that, I'll pull over this Google sheet, which you can find the link to on Wrestlenomics.com actually. So this is the spreadsheet that I've been using for the last several years to figure out what the paid attendance was for WrestleMania, and the gate is not really something that we have to figure out. It's something that is just stated in a press release. So last year's WrestleMania did a $16.9 million gate. The year before that did a $14.1 million gate. The year before that did a $14.5 million gate. So I think it's somewhere in that range. I would imagine the average ticket price is going to be somewhere around $225 to $250, maybe $275, since the average ticket price for WrestleMania is growing every year. So we need to get some idea. You figure that WrestleMania probably sells out with no coronavirus, but how big is Raymond James Stadium, and what would it be configured for, and how many of those seats would actually end up being paid for? And looking up the stadium capacity for each of these venues is not super helpful, in fact, but we'll go through just to show you how unhelpful they are. So Superdome, the capacity, this is probably for football, of 74,000, and then W put about 60,000 paid in there. And then if we look at, let's see, Camping World Stadium, and that has a capacity probably again for football of 65,000, and WWE put about 65,000 paid in there. So a big discrepancy there as far as what the capacity is for football and what the WWE paid attendance was. And if we look at MetLife Stadium, that's where last year's WrestleMania was, an 82,500 capacity, and WWE looks like they put about 63,000 in there paid. So, and that's a big margin, right? So Raymond James Stadium for football, 65,890. Let's see. Yeah, right about that range. You got another number here down here, very close to that. Okay. So, again, we're just doing a rough estimate here. So let's say we got about 66,000, 65,000 here. That's very similar to what Orlando was. It similar to what Orlando was? It is, right? So where's Orlando? Camping World Stadium, yeah. So let's say 65,000 paid at an average ticket price. So let's go with last year's average ticket price of $268. And let's pull out the calculator here. Let's do about 65,000. I think this is going to be on the aggressive side, but a live gate of 17.4 million. That would be rivaling. That would be breaking the all-time record. So I think that's aggressive. All right, let's go with the Superdome's 60,000. Let's go with 60,000 straight times 268. 16 million. That seems more reasonable. I don't think we were about to set a all-time pro wrestling gate record, but who knows? So about 16 million, let's say, in ticket sales, plus the 4 events at the arena. So we're going to estimate $1 million each for those. So we're going to add $4 million to that, and we get $20 million here. Now we need to take a guess at venue merch here. So we go back to the big spreadsheet and find the venue merch tab. Scrolling over, and where is it? Oh, we went too far. Okay, so we look at the venue merch tab, and I want to get an idea of what WrestleMania quarters do compared to others. So we can see here in Q2, which contains WrestleMania for all 4 years that we're looking at here. And so last year it does 7.1. The other quarters do 3.2, 3.5, 4.8. Okay, so we take the average. Can I figure out what the average of that is? Let's see. The average of that, of the non-WrestleMania quarters, is 3.8. So that's a difference of $3.3 million. Okay, 3.3. Let's look at the year before that to see if that's not an anomaly. So we average the non-WrestleMania quarters of 2018. You get an average of 4.6 compared to 7.8. And that's a difference of $3.2 million. So a very similar number. We'll go with 3.3 million. So remember, for the the total live gates of WrestleMania and the 4 arena events, we got 20 million. So we add $3.3 million to that. We're getting up to $23 million. Okay, so those are the two pieces of business that we mentioned: the press release, live event ticket sales, and merchandise sold at the venues. We also need to consider, in the event that WrestleMania is postponed or canceled, that a surge of WWE Network subscribers that comes right before WrestleMania is not going to happen. So we have to get an idea of what's the value of that. And if we look into the WWE Network stuff that I've got here, I've got WWE Network revenue broken down by quarter. Of course, WWE reports the WWE Network segment and includes all the WWE Network subscriber money in with whatever remaining pay-per-view money there is left. But that kind of makes sense because you wouldn't be getting an increase in whatever pay-per-view business that's left that's associated with WrestleMania, because WrestleMania is a peak event. So again, we want to consider sort of what the average difference is in Q2 versus the other quarters of the year. You know, I, of course, would not try to do this comparison when assessing the value of any other pay-per-view, but I think it's somewhat fair to do this in this case because WrestleMania is the by far peak event. And it is the single piece of content more than any other piece of content that drives business to the W Network. And actually, come to think of it, I have done a separate spreadsheet here to think about this question. So we're looking at here, this is revenue here, highlighted revenue, we will call it. And this upper table is addressing subscribers. So I've taken, okay, let's just straighten that out. Okay, so I've taken subscribers for the Q4 of the prior year and try to get an idea of what the subscribers would be without WrestleMania. So you take the Q4 ending subscribers and you look at what the WrestleMania number was, and it's usually been doing somewhere between 18%, or actually between 16% and 23%, which accounts for a change of an increase of somewhere between 239,000 subscribers and 337,000 subscribers. And again, that is the period between the end of the year and the day after WrestleMania. And you can see that illustrated here in this chart, which has a generic title, which we will delete now. So the question to consider now is what are Q2 average subs without WrestleMania? And I don't know that this is actually the best way to calculate this, but maybe better to just look at network subscribers in general here. All right, so let's look at the network. The projection for Q1, which they did give in the last quarterly report, is in this other tab. It is 1.47 million subscribers. So let's just add that in here to wipe that out because I don't think we need that anymore. And we'll add in here 2020, and that estimate is, let's see, 1,470,000 subscribers. And as you can see in this table, Q2 is always, right? Yes, is always an increase because Q2 contains WrestleMania, and in 2015, WrestleMania was actually in Q1, but the service was so new that it increased anyway. And not to mention the fact that WrestleMania is happening at the end of Q1, so a lot of those subscribers are good for at least 30 days, and they subscribed at the end of the quarter, so their subscriptions went on into Q2, and theoretically they did not cancel, many of them anyway, until the numbers do go down slightly in Q3. So I've got to think that this number that they projected in Q1 is based partly on the increased interest, because we usually do see from Q4 of the prior year to Q1. Now we actually did see average subs about flat last year. Let's see over here, they did go up in 2018 in Q1. This is quarter over quarter. And over here from the end of 2016 to the first quarter of 2017, they do go up. I don't know. I think, though, anyway, that maybe there's less retention or more churn and less adoption just because you know that WrestleMania isn't happening. So I think part of what's being factored into this projection is the expectation of a lot of customers that who do sign up in March or February or January, or with the idea that they're going to get WrestleMania soon. So might as well sign up now. Although Royal Rumble did happen with no thought in mind that there wouldn't be a WrestleMania for some reason. So let's say this number turns out to be flat. So let's just sort of subjectively punch that number in the same number for Q4. Okay, now to try to estimate the actual revenue related to this number of subscribers, I've got another table down here where I'm calculating the average revenue per subscriber. So I'm going to add a 2020 line to this, and I don't know of any price point changes in any markets, so I think it's fair to let's take the average of all 4 quarters here of 2019, which comes out to $29.66. Remember, this is 3 months here. So we'll take that number and we'll try to process a revenue estimate here. Of course, the problem here is that this includes pay-per-view money. But at this point, let's hope that pay-per-view, the conversion of people using pay-per-view to the network has stabilized or has become so small as to be more or less, as George Barris would say, de minimis. That means it doesn't matter that much. So now we take this $29.66 and we multiply it by this number times 1,000 here, and we get, let's see. Okay, and there we go. After editing for all the times that I put the formula in wrong because of all the abbreviated numbers we've got here, so we end up with, and let's see if I can format paint that. There we go. So we end up with $42 million for Q1. That's not the end of the problem yet, because we've got to get to Q2 here. And isn't this number higher in Q2? Yeah, that must be related to pay-per-view. So let's go with the same number as the prior year. That is for Q2. Again, this is, what do we call this? Network plus pay-per-view revenue per paid sub. So $30.69. And we've got to come up with a idea of what subs would be without Mania. Let's say would they be exactly the same? Because you would think now you've got a quarter that doesn't contain Royal Rumble, as well as a quarter that doesn't contain WrestleMania. So they could be down from Q1. Unless WrestleMania happens in Q2, which is April, May, June. If WrestleMania happened in June, you save this number. So that's a big question. And I bet that's why they didn't mention anything about network subs in that press release, because they figured, well, maybe we can get it in June. And that's a good question. But for the sake of imagining what the value of WrestleMania is, for the sake of this exercise, let's imagine WrestleMania is canceled outright. There is no WrestleMania. That's not what I think is going to happen. But let's imagine for the sake of exercise. And I think you've got a number that is slightly smaller than this number. Let's say it's 95% of the Q1 number. So we take 95% and multiply it by that number, and we get a number with decimals that I have to eliminate. Oh my God. Okay, let's fix the format there. There we go. So now if we just extrapolate this out, we get $41 million there. Whereas with WrestleMania, let's see here. With WrestleMania, I figure you get an increase of around 264,000 extra subscribers throughout the quarter on average, and you get a number of 1,653,000 subscribers. So this is becoming a lot to put in my brain here, so I'm going to get a notepad out, and I'm going to go back to the other sheet and remember that we got $41.4 million there. So I'm going to take that, put it in here, so I remember that. And we need to replace this number with a different estimate, which is going to be this number, which we're going to copy, 1653. Okay. paste it in there, bang. So we have the difference is $50.7 million if you do Wrestlemania. And that comes out to, okay, so we're just going to subtract those two numbers from each other. So we take the calculator back out here. And remember, we've got this much money for Wrestlemania. Otherwise, over $23 million there. Write that down too, so don't forget it. And we take 50 minus 41, 4, and that's a network value of $9 million. Okay, so you just write that down quickly as well, that the network for Mania provides about $9.3 million estimated in value to the network, and we add that back to the other, let's see, 23,380,000, and we get a grand total. Okay, let's try that again. 23, there we go, plus $9.3 million, and we get a grand total. So this is not what I estimated earlier on Twitter, but that's okay. So we got 32 million, almost $33 million there. So there we have it. What does WrestleMania generate at this point for WWE in a world where there is no more traditional pay-per-view, at least for now? $32,680,000. $32,680,000. So now, again, for some perspective, what does that mean in the larger picture of WWE in terms of their total finances? Q2 of last year did $269 million, and then that number is going to be even higher in 2020 because of the increase in TV rights fees. And I bet we get another Saudi Arabia event in this quarter as well. And in fact, you can tell in recent history which quarters are the ones that have Saudi Arabia events in them, because they are the highest quarters in the last couple of years here. Q2 as well will probably have another Saudi Arabia event in it, in fact. That will probably be worth more than $33 million. So yeah, at this point, a single Saudi Arabia event is worth more than WrestleMania, even when you factor in the value that WrestleMania provides to the network, even when you factor in the 4 arena events that run adjacent to WrestleMania, and even when you factor in the venue merchandise. A good question is, though, I don't know how access is counted, whether that registers, whether that's a few million or not. Anyway, I don't think it changes the estimate much in terms of percent. So there you have it. There's the number. You can tell your friends that WrestleMania is worth $33 million to WWE, roughly, within, I don't know, 5%, I guess. But it's less than what they get from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for a single event, which is about $50 million. And that's a good chunk of WWE's revenue. But overall, WWE will be okay. WWE does say it does have $500 million, whereas the promoter and Vince wants to say $500 million. They'll be okay. They have a lot of cash and debt reserves. I think their TV money is guaranteed regardless. So hopefully soon everything gets back to normal in the wrestling world and in life. And we'll talk more about Wrestlenomics next time.